So here is kind of our organizer. Begin with the facts. Humans often do all of these things. We fight, we start wars, we kill, we're self-destructive, we're petty, we're vindictive, we act out, we don't get our way, we abuse our spouses, we neglect our children, we rationalize, we project, we stereotype. So if this is true, then we have to figure out why. And we have to figure out how to intervene. We act inconsistently, we ignore relevant evidence, we jump to conclusions, say and believe things that don't make good sense, we deceive ourselves in many ways, we're our own worst enemy. To the extent that you develop as a rational person, you will be getting command of your egocentric nature. In other words, if you want to develop as well as you're capable of developing, then you have to learn how to intervene into these problems. So part of us is naturally egocentric. Let me back up from that. So our first order of thinking is egocentric. So before we're rational, we're egocentric. That's our natural place that we go back to, just like Rush pointed out with my example. My PowerPoints are available. Okay? Forgetting that someone else has some. So it's like when I make tea for my husband, I forget that he likes cream in his tea, because I don't. So I make him tea the way I make it, even after more than a decade. So you figured that one out. So it makes sense, though. We're centered in ourselves. We're pre-wired to think within our own viewpoint. Right?
Well, I was just going to say, the only reason I spoke up is because my PowerPoints are also on that. So I wanted to.
Right. So the first move is B. Yes. So imagine this for a moment. Imagine you're born, but you are not, as a human animal, you're not the way you are now. Instead, that is, you're not naturally egocentric. Instead of being that, you are naturally wired into other people's feelings and desires and thoughts. So instead of automatically thinking of what I want and need and what I feel someone else's pain. So when by implication, if I'm causing someone harm, then I feel their pain. The closest we can get to that is intellectual empathy. That is, imagining what it might feel like if I do this to you. We had a case here in our local area, just north of here, recently, where two teenage girls torched a kitten. Now, to do that shows almost a complete lack of feeling for something else, for some other creature's feelings. I mean, you would have to be virtually ethically blind in that case to do that. So what is it that is going on in the mind of this person that says that's okay? But if we were pre-wired to feel the pain of others, first of all, there would be, go back to our previous slide. We wouldn't have any of it.
Would we?
Or we would have very little of it, let's say.
Because one of the pathologies of the kind of people who torch kittens is, in fact, they'd like to feel what that's feeling like, because that's how pathological they are.
Well,
so maybe in that example, maybe that's not the perfect example there, but
I don't think so. I mean, if someone is torturing someone else, are they saying, I'm torturing you because I am so dysfunctional in my own life and can't feel anything, so somehow this is helping me. I mean, that's an implication of what you're saying, right?
And I seem to recall, I can't cite it, but I've seen evidence where, yes, there are people who are that pathological that they revel in the pain of others and they can imagine.
Yeah.
Well, I was just going to say that.
We're getting off course, I think.
I was going to say that would may be true of individuals, but they wouldn't be able to influence anyone. They wouldn't be able to have armies of these people.
No, that's certainly true. We hope.
Yeah.
Now there is a connection, though, that we might make here, possibly, and you might take out your human mind.
I brought mine.
The human mind is the small. It's hard to tell that this is actually purple. It's supposed to have a lavender, right? But it's barely lavender. And you can just look at. Basically, this little guy deals with two things. One is the relationship between thinking, feeling, and wanting. So the human mind having three functions. And it deals with the problem of egocentricity. And we're going to work with this a little bit in here today. But now, I'm looking right now at pages 24 and 25, and I'm looking at the defense mechanisms, because what David's example reminds me of is the defense mechanism of sublimation, which you see on the bottom of page, toward the bottom of page 25. When a person diverts instinctive, primitive, or socially unacceptable desires into socially acceptable activities. Example, the sexually unfulfilled drill sergeant may sublimate his sexual energy through aggressive and dominating behavior toward new recruits. That's sort of as close as I can get to that point.
Yes.
So I'm sexually frustrated, so I am going to dominate you in certain ways, you, my group, and through this I'm getting some release that's similar to sexual release, something like that. So what this points up is the complexities of the human mind and the many ways in which we see dysfunctionality operative in human life. So, but let's go back to this point I'm trying to make about pre-wiring. It's the root, I think, of the problem. Because I'm not wired to feel anyone else's pain. For me to do that, I have to do something intellectually. So when we torture people, what we're doing in our minds is we are saying, this is perfectly justified for the following reasons, because this person isn't really a human. This person is all of these horrible things, and therefore we're justified in dehumanizing them through this process. Or we may have this idea that if we torture, then we'll get the evidence that we need, and therefore, even though I'm causing this terrible pain, it's really justified because we need to get this information, and if we just do this, see what I mean? And I think that the evidence doesn't support that, but I don't want to get off on sort of arguing that question right now. I just want you to think about this idea that imagine what it would be like to live in a world, do that for a couple minutes with your partner. What would it be like if you came into the world and instead of being pre-wired the way that you are into your own feelings and desires and wants, imagine what the world would be like if we could feel the pain of others when we're inflicting the pain. We could think the thoughts of others, not literally maybe, but what would that look like? Talk about that for a few minutes.
Yeah.